Well, Indian economy is largely characterized by a big informal sector. Almost 90% of the people work in informal sector, which is really de-linked from the formal economy. So by informal, I mean these are people in agriculture, in lots of small trades, and they work with very low level of technology. They have access to low level of skills, access to very low level of credit. And as a result, productivity improvements in this sector are very hard to come by. The economy has been growing very fast over the last 3 decades, mostly because of high-tech sectors like software exports, auto parts, pharmaceuticals, etc. But these sectors, although they're growing very fast, employ a very small part of the labor force. As a result, the overall growth is high, but the inequality is growing. On the paper, government has undertaken a lot of schemes of poverty alleviation. The design of these schemes looks just the way it should be. The problem is with implementation, because the actual implementation is done through this large-scale government bureaucracy, and the people who have power at local levels, and there is widespread corruption. So what is intended doesn't seem to happen. This is a problem which is very difficult to solve, because the corruption is based on traditional hierarchies which have in fact evolved over a long time, and the local political power structures. That does not change overnight. But people are still thinking about policies in the short run. Often they are based on new technologies like information technology. One of the things that really gives power to the local politicians is their monopoly of information. And so there is an attempt now, government passed a law called Right to Information, where ordinary people can petition the government to reveal information that is necessary, like what kind of funds were allocated, for what purpose, and which makes it very difficult for local politicians to really fleece the people, to cheat the people, right? Secondly, the information technology can be handy, we feel, by allowing technological solutions such as direct cash transfers into the intended beneficiaries, which really reduces the power of local bureaucrats to either sanction the funds or not, right? When you reduce the discretionary power of the bureaucrats, it weakens their stranglehold over the local economy, and hopefully that will reduce corruption. Politics is played at different levels. The way it is happening in India is often the politicians at the center, they would like to be re-elected. So they want to form policies, and this is why some of these very progressive acts were implemented in the parliament, right? But there is, when the actual implementation takes place, you go through several layers of government bureaucracy, right? And so my suggested answer was, first of all, to reduce the level of corruption at local levels, at the lower levels, with the hope that at the highest level, in fact, it is in their interest, it is in the interest of the ruling party and so on, to pass laws and to enact policies which in fact would win them favor in the next election. I think it would be presumptuous of me to kind of give advice on what Peru should do when I've been here 4 days and I know so little about Peru. But I will just answer the question on the basis of what I think are the similarities between India and Peru, and based on my own experience in India. So this is not so much an advice, but just perhaps possibilities that may or may not be true. So for one thing, Peru is now booming. There is a process going on throughout the world where, in fact, developed countries like United States or United Kingdom, so on, which have really dominated the world stage for a very long time, are in fact fading in importance, partly because countries like China, India, Brazil, Peru are now coming up with a higher level of skills, absorbing the technology which is available, and being internationally competitive. As a result, you can see manufacturing sector is disappearing from United States and in fact causing huge problems. Whereas a place like Peru, you see the university graduates now are looking at a very bright future. They have jobs available, which is not the case in many of the developed countries, because many of the jobs are going to the emerging economies, and Peru is very much an emerging economy. So what should an emerging economy like Peru do? Well, first of all, the boom times come and go. And the real challenge is to make these boom times last. And the only way you can do that is by building, paying attention to the building blocks of an economy for a long time. And one of them is really building the skill levels, infrastructure, etc. Because we don't know exactly, we can't forecast the future. Technologies may change. We don't know what sort of jobs will be in fashion even 10 years from now. And so the only thing we can do is to raise the level of education, have good infrastructure, so that you can cope with any changes that occur in the global economy and take advantage of them. But the one big challenge for all these emerging economies, again, judging from my experience in India, is that the growth and bright future should not be confined just to a small segment of the population, which means things like education, access to education, access to good healthcare should be really, should cover a wide range, big part of the population, so that when the time comes, you have a skilled labor force, not just for 10% of the population, but for 80, 90, 100% of the population. That's just a kind of a general answer to your question.